What's up, sloppers? I'm Idyl, and this is my slop. And by my slop, I mean a 2004 Runescape private server that emulates the game exactly as it was when Runescape 2 released. I'm gonna put a brief disclaimer out there before I start talking about this private server. I am not endorsing this private server, I am not paid for or compensated by the creators of this server in any way, and I am not saying that you should go play this private server. This is not an advertisement, and also, allegedly, I didn't play this private server, my friend played this private server, and I'm just talking about it in the first person as if I am my friend who played this private server, allegedly. For the past couple of months, I have been addicted to a version of RuneScape that is kind of objectively bad. I started playing RuneScape in 2005, so just a year after what this server is modeled after, and in that time, RuneScape got a lot better than it was in 2004. Like, I need to make it clear how kind of crazy this version of the game is. If you've never played RuneScape before, there are some very important creature comforts that make it, enjoyable. For example, since the whole game is point and click, when you click on something in your inventory, it gets a useful white outline so you know what you're interacting with. In 2004, that wasn't there. You just clicked on something and then you had to hope you remembered, so if you misclick, that's a nightmare. Another big part of RuneScape is AFKing, where you might get a bunch of raw fish and then cook it. For almost all of RuneScape's history, that's been a very relaxing thing to do. You click on the raw food, you use it on the fire, your character is just gonna go ahead and make all of it, and bada bing bada boom, you're done. But in 2004, you had to click the fish, click the fire, click the fish, click the fire, click the fish, click the fire. Or just really simple stuff, like in 2004, you couldn't rotate the camera with the middle mouse button, you had to use the arrow keys, and you can't zoom in and out of your character so you can get a wider field of view or get super in close to whatever you're doing. You were just at this constant zoom level. There's even bigger stuff missing that I think people will consider crucial to what is RuneScape's identity. Things like the Grand Exchange, where you can just sell things to other players automatically and, most importantly, passively. Entire skills are missing in 2004, like construction, which lets you have a player-owned house, which is a really huge part of the game for multiple other skills, like prayer. You're also missing farming, hunter, but maybe most importantly, you're missing the Slayer skill, which a lot of RuneScape players will tell you is the best skill in the game. Oh yeah, there's also no iconic bosses like Barrows or Jad or Dagonoth Kings. The only two bosses in this game are the King Black Dragon and the Caliphite Queen, which are kind of boring bosses, all things considered. To a lot of people, this isn't even the RuneScape they know, but I just can't help but love it. For some reason, even acknowledging that it's kind of not good. When I say not good, I do mean that in 2004, RuneScape had some warts. I want to give all credit in the world to Lost City and all of the developers who are maintaining this open source project, which is really cool, by the way, that it's open source. It takes a lot of hard work to do something like this, building RuneScape in 2004 from scratch, just piecing together screenshots and old videos and forum posts to understand how things worked. I'm not shitting on that. I am shitting a little bit on what RuneScape was. That said, again, I'm addicted to this right now. Something's wrong with me. But I do think there is something gameplay-wise that makes RuneScape in 2004 really unique and enjoyable that a lot of MMOs have lost today. I think the biggest part of it is that it's just a more social game, and this is something that I've talked about kind of a lot when I talk about what modern MMOs have lost. In 2004 Scape, if you want to trade with anyone, you have to do it face-to-face. Usually that requires sitting in the Varrock West Bank and just spamming the same message over and over again until you get a trade request and you can sell something, and that often leads to negotiations of how much you're gonna sell something for or what other items you might use to barter. This is objectively less convenient, takes longer, and is just more annoying than having something like the Grand Exchange or the auction house that a lot of other MMOs have. But it has this charm that makes it feel like I'm actually interacting with other players. Probably because I'm actually interacting with other players. But it goes beyond the fact that you just have to trade with other players. There's also the fact of where the items actually enter the economy from. That is also other players. In its current state, 2004scape is just using the free-to-play content that was available in 2004, which means there's not a whole lot of items out there in the first place, and therefore, the most important weapon in the entire game right now is the Rune Scimitar. For context, the Rune Scimitar in modern RuneScape is one of the easiest items to obtain, and you can get to 40 attack to wield it by just completing like a quest or two. But in free-to-play 2004scape, it takes a little bit of effort to get to 40 attack, and then the only way to actually get a Rune Scimitar is to smith it with 88 smithing, which is a very high smithing level, and it actually takes an insane amount of dedication to do it in 2004. I cannot believe some people on the server actually have 88 smithing. But what makes this cool is that, first of all, the Rune Scimitar is really valuable. You have to grind a lot of different money-making methods to afford it, and then you have to talk to one of the people who actually made the Rune Scimitar to buy one. In my opinion, this is something a lot of modern MMOs have trouble doing, making crafting skills a valuable asset. In RuneScape in 2004, that wasn't a problem. And it's actually something you see in other MMOs from 2004, like World of Warcraft. Blacksmithing Lionheart helms is one of the most valuable things you can do in that game. Compare that to retail WoW, and there's a lot less relative value to those crafting skills. It was just something that there was more emphasis on back then. So it's just really cool to revisit a world where that was the case. Rune Scimitars are just an example, by the way. This goes for a ton of weapons, armors, even things like runes, which you use to cast magic spells, are really valuable because the #1 way to get them is by people actually crafting the runes, which is not at all the case in RuneScape today. Another thing I think shouldn't go unnoticed about 2004scape is that it's really slow, and I think that's a good thing. I think slower MMOs tend to be, first of all, easier to understand, but also just more valuable in a way. Every time I get a level up or obtain a resource in 2004scape, it means something. It's important. And that helps the feedback loop just feel really good. If I keep comparing it to old school RuneScape, which I think is kind of fair, I mean, they're like evolutionarily on the same family tree, then old school RuneScape loses that in some ways. To be fair, I do think old school RuneScape still does the best job out of any modern MMO of making progress feel meaningful, but compared to 2004scape, it's a whole different beast. In 2004, there was just fewer ways to train your skills efficiently, which meant every level mattered more. If you get your mining level up to mine things like mithril ore or adamant ore or even rune ore, then that's a lot of money that you can make off of those resources because they are really valuable to people training other skills. The economy works off of this slow progression to reward people who have put that effort in. It's a whole continuous cycle that creates a gameplay loop that is really, really satisfying to be a part of, and is part of what got me so interested in the game back in 2005. With all of these elements of being slow and progress being meaningful and players being an important part of the economy, goes back to what I think RuneScape was founded on, which was being a sandbox game. I have talked about this in other videos, but in case you're unfamiliar, there are two main types of MMOs out there: sandbox MMOs and theme park MMOs. Theme park MMOs are like World of Warcraft or most modern MMOs you'll see out there now, where there's just a bunch of quests that you're following in some sort of linear-ish progression to get through a main story and then get to an end game with raids and all that. Think of it like you're being handheld through your journey. That's not a bad thing. I think it's a really, really great type of MMO, and I mean, World of Warcraft was the biggest game in history at one point, so I feel like the market decided that it's also a really great type of MMO, but it offers something completely different to what was the bigger style of MMOs prior to World of Warcraft: the sandbox MMO. Sandbox MMOs are more like, do whatever you want. We provide you a framework to operate in, and then the players decide what happens in that framework. Old school RuneScape to this day I still think is a sandbox MMO. It leans into some theme parky elements by just having more quests, having an activity advisor and all that, but really it just drops you in the game and you become a part of the world that players have created. Because of the relative lack of content though, 2004scape is even more of a sandbox. You can decide what part you play in this world based purely on what you want to do. Do you want to be someone who goes to kill hill giants to get big bones to either train your own prayer skill or trade it off to people who will train their prayer skill? Do you want to become a top rune crafter on the server so that you're the #1 source of valuable runes? Do you want to be a massive moneymaker who flips items by selling at a higher price than you buy them for? Do you want to become one of the top smiths on the server by buying a bunch of coal and iron and making steel products until you can make the higher level stuff? You have all these options available to you because the game is so wide open. It's almost counterintuitive that the less there is, the more wide open the options are. It's a really special interaction that I think is a big part of what made RuneScape so popular, especially starting in 2004. So before I say this next part, I do want to just make it clear that I think RuneScape in 2004 was a very fun game. There's a lot of value to it. Don't take this the wrong way. It's totally nostalgia. I mean, like, come on, it's nostalgia. I would not be playing this if I wasn't nostalgic for this game looking this way and having these interactions. I have fought hard against the idea that old school RuneScape is a popular game because of nostalgia. I think that is verifiably false, not only in the fact that the game is a far cry from what it was in 2007, which is what we would be nostalgic for if that was the case, but also because of the fact that it is more popular than ever, and so many of those people never played RuneScape back in 2007. So I think it's actually a stupid statement to make, outright stupid. You would have to be like an idiot to say it's nostalgia. 2004 Scape, yeah, it's totally nostalgia. I can't imagine why someone who has never played RuneScape before would go back to this and think, this is how games should be. Now again, I think there are elements that do make it unique, special, and a good game, but overall, the cons kinda outweigh the pros on this game. I don't mean to speak for everyone. I know there are some people who actually have never played RuneScape in 2004, 2005, that era, and do enjoy 2004 Scape, but I think I speak for the majority of the player base by saying it's a nostalgia trip, and that's good. I'm really happy that it serves that purpose, because that's what private servers in my perfect world should be. They should be preservation. There's been a lot of talk about MMOs being preserved, either officially or unofficially, and we've seen that happen multiple times over the years. Star Wars Galaxies has a ton of private servers, some of which are even endorsed by Sony, the original publishers of Star Wars Galaxies. Same with City of Heroes. NCSoft has endorsed the main City of Heroes private server. There's an important caveat here that both of those games are no longer online, so maybe it's a little bit easier for those companies to be like, yeah, whatever, go make a private server, see if I care. But I think more companies of active games should maybe take a look at endorsing things like 2004 Scape. If you think about what the big issues with private servers are from the company's perspective, it's infringing on IP, which, I mean, I know they say they built it from scratch, but like, I mean, come on, it's RuneScape still. This is IP infringement. I don't think that's controversial to say. The other issue is that it would be leeching players from the main game. I don't think that's happening here. 2004 Scape is very popular by RuneScape private server standards, at least. It has usually like 500 to 800 players online at any time. That's a big amount of players. That's also the amount of players that are on old school RuneScape on a single world of the 200 worlds that are available on that game. So I don't think this is delivering a huge blow to old school RuneScape, because it also just delivers an entirely different experience, one that I don't think a lot of old school RuneScape players are going to jump ship for. What 2004 Scape does is provide a service to experience a game that is no longer available in an official capacity. And I don't think it makes sense to ask Jagex or to ask Blizzard or to ask Daybreak, the makers of EverQuest, to spend time creating these preservation servers when they could be creating new content for their existing games. What I would like to see is some sort of official endorsement or official program to make these things not against the terms of service of the games. Like, remember that whole disclaimer I gave at the beginning of the video that this wasn't an endorsement or advertisement of the private server and that I didn't play it allegedly? That's because in theory, I could be in trouble for even participating in this server, especially if I was trying to advertise it. And I think that's kind of a shame. I do get it for a lot of private servers that are sketchier and will steal your information and all that, but this is an open source preservation project. you can see all of the server code. You can download your own player and then run a server locally with that player that you've been working on the public version of the game. It's all above board, and Lost City aren't the only people doing this. They are just the most popular right now, and I think what they're doing has actual, genuine value from a preservation perspective that allows players, even if they're only going to play for a couple of hours, to take a trip down memory lane or see the origins of their favorite game. It provides a service that I really, really am thankful exists. So if you're curious why I'm so interested in 2004scape, why I've enjoyed my time on it so much, it is because it's a style of game that I actually like, and I can acknowledge it's niche. But the main reason I'm happy it's there is because it's preservation, and I'm a huge, huge fan of preservation in whatever form we can get it in. Open source especially. I know this might seem like a lot to ask, but if anyone from Jagex is watching, I know you watch the main channel, maybe you're a slopper as well, I think it'd be worth considering following in the footsteps of Daybreak Games' endorsement of some EverQuest private servers, or NCSoft's endorsement of that City of Heroes private server, and allowing 2004scape to exist in some sort of official capacity. Not one where you guys have to take on the work of preserving it and maintaining it, but just one where it's not going to get taken down as long as it remains open source or under some other conditions. I understand that's a lot to ask. I understand it's an unrealistic ask, but hey, I just thought I'd ask because preservation, heck yeah, baby. So in conclusion, yeah, the server is kind of weird, super niche, nostalgia. God, I love it. Again, not an advertisement. Please don't sue me.